Too small? Too weak? Gideon felt the same, and God used him anyway. What does that mean for you? In 12 minutes, I'll give 3 responses you can use the next time God calls you, even if you feel unqualified. Hi, welcome to Seeds of Greatness. If you feel unqualified for what God asks, this word is for you. God said to Gideon, "Go in this might of yours," but Gideon asked for signs. God uses unlikely people who obey in small ways. Let's journey back in time to an era of deep despair for the people of Israel. For 7 long years, they were crushed under the thumb of the Midianites. Imagine living in constant fear, where any fruit of your labor could be stolen in an instant. The enemy would swarm the land like locusts, stripping it bare, leaving nothing but poverty and hopelessness. This was the world Gideon knew. It was a world that taught you to be small, to be invisible. And in this world, we find our central figure, Gideon. But we don't find him on a battlefield or on a throne. We find him in a winepress. He was hiding, threshing a little bit of wheat in a pit dug into the ground, a place designed for crushing grapes, not for separating grain. A threshing floor was wide and open, exposed to the wind and to the enemy. A winepress was a hole, a confined, hidden space. It was the perfect place to go if you didn't want to be seen. This wasn't just caution, it was a portrait of profound fear. And it's right here, in this moment of concealment, at the absolute bottom, that the divine breaks through. An angel of the Lord appears and speaks a sentence that must have sounded like a cruel joke. "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Mighty warrior. Gideon must have looked over his shoulder. He was a farmer in a hole, not a soldier on a war horse. His response is so beautifully, painfully human. He questions, he doubts, he points to the evidence of his suffering. "Pardon me, my Lord," he says, "but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us?" This is one of the most powerful truths in Scripture. God does not see you as you see yourself. You might see your fear, your failures, your limitations. You might define yourself by your hiding place, by the smallness you feel in the face of your challenges. But God sees the person He created you to be. He called Gideon a mighty warrior, not because of what he was doing, but because of who he was destined to become. The call was a prophecy. It was an invitation to step into a new identity, one that was based on God's power, not Gideon's perceived weakness. We all have our own wine presses, don't we? Those secret places of fear and inadequacy where we hide. Maybe your wine press is imposter syndrome at work, the feeling that you're not good enough and will be found out. Maybe it's the fear of starting a new venture, mending a broken relationship, or simply using your voice. It's any place where we allow fear to shrink our world and our view of ourselves. But here is the incredible hope of Gideon's story. God finds us where we are. He meets us right in the middle of our winepress in our fear and doubt. He doesn't condemn us for hiding. He sits with us, and then He speaks our true name. He calls out the mighty warrior within, and then He asks us to step, not to conquer the world in a single leap, but to take one small, trembling step out of the shadows and into the light He is providing. That is where the transformation begins. So what do we do when we feel like Gideon, hiding, threshing wheat in a winepress, convinced we are the least of the least? God's call comes, and it feels impossibly large. The good news is God's response to our inadequacy is not condemnation, but a clear 3-part strategy. It's a path from fear to faith, and it begins with one simple, profound action. First, we must obey the small. Do the tiny task that is offered. Before Gideon could lead an army, God gave him a very specific, very personal assignment: tear down your father's altar to Baal. It wasn't about defeating the Midianites yet. It was about dealing with the idolatry in his own backyard. God rarely hands us the entire 10-year plan. He gives us the next right thing. The journey of 1,000 miles doesn't begin with a map of the whole world. It begins with a single step. What is that one stone for you today? Maybe it's not tearing down a physical altar. Maybe it's making a phone call you've been dreading, or writing the first paragraph of that book you feel called to write. Or maybe it's as simple as choosing to speak a word of kindness instead of criticism. These small acts of obedience are the training ground for our faith. They are God's way of asking, "Can I trust you with this little thing? Because if you are faithful here, I can entrust you with so much more." Don't despise the day of small beginnings. Your giant-slaying destiny is built on a foundation of small, faithful yeses. Second, assemble the brave. This is where we must fight our modern obsession with metrics. Gideon initially gathered an army of 32,000 men. By human standards, that's a respectable force. But God saw it differently. He saw 32,000 reasons for Israel to take the credit for the victory. So he began to whittle them down. He told Gideon, "Whoever is fearful and trembling, let him return home." 22,000 men left. More than 2/3 of his army walked away because of fear. This is a powerful lesson. God is not looking for a crowd. He is looking for a core. He is not interested in numbers. He is interested in faith. So we must gather a small, faithful team. Look around your life. Who are the people who aren't driven by fear, but by faith? Who are the ones who will stand with you, pray for you, and believe with you, even when the odds are stacked against you? This isn't about building a network. It's about cultivating a community. It's about finding your fellow soldiers who, when the pressure is on, will remain vigilant and ready. Your 300 are not the most popular or the most powerful people you know. They are the most faithful. Finally, and this is the hardest part, we must trust God's process. After sending the fearful home, God still said the army was too big. He reduced the remaining 10,000 down to a mere 300 men. This is the moment of ultimate surrender. This is the 300 men moment. It's the point where God reduces our weight to illustrate his power. Imagine Gideon standing before this tiny band of brothers, armed not with swords and shields, but with trumpets, empty jars, and torches. It makes no logical sense. It is a strategy born in heaven, not on earth. And that is precisely the point. God's process often involves stripping away everything we rely on: our strength, our resources, our logic, our carefully laid plans. He is the divine sculptor, chipping away all the excess marble of our self-sufficiency until the masterpiece of his strength, perfected in our weakness, is revealed. Trusting this process means embracing the absurdity. It means being willing to look foolish in the eyes of the world. It means holding a clay jar and a trumpet and believing it is more than enough. Because the 300 men moment is where our profound inadequacy collides with God's infinite sufficiency. It's the sacred space where we stop trying to be strong enough and simply allow God to be strong in us. Obey the small, assemble the brave, and trust the process. This is how the weakest become warriors. So how do we move from hearing a story like Gideon's to living it out? How do we turn inspiration into transformation? It's easy to hear about God using an underdog and feel stuck in our own inadequacy. But the journey from who, me, to yes, Lord doesn't happen in one giant leap. It happens through small, intentional steps of faith. It begins not with a grand battle plan, but with a simple yes in the ordinary moments of our lives. Let's explore 3 practical invitations to activate your faith, moving from your heart into the world. First, let's start small. The invitation is this. Try these. 1. Say yes to a small serve today. We often want the trumpet and the torch, but God frequently hands us a simple task first. Why? Because faithfulness is a muscle built in the small reps. What does a small serve look like? It could be sending that encouraging text you thought of. It could be pausing to truly listen to a friend. Maybe it's anonymously paying for someone's coffee. These acts are not insignificant. They are whispers of yes to God, your way of saying, I am available. Don't underestimate the power of a small act of obedience. It's the seed from which God grows a forest of impact. Second, after that personal step, move into community. 2. Invite one person to join you next week. Gideon didn't face the enemy alone. He had his 300. God designed us for connection, and our faith is meant to be lived out alongside others. But inviting someone can feel vulnerable. The fear of rejection is real. So let's reframe it. This isn't about pressure. It's about partnership. Who in your life might be waiting for an invitation? You could ask a coworker to join you for a volunteer event, or invite a neighbor to church. It could be as simple as saying, I'm trying to be more intentional in my faith. Would you want to grab coffee and talk about it? Your obedience is in the asking. You are creating space for God to work, not just in your life, but in someone else's too. Finally, make your commitment tangible. 3. Do one public step. Speak your intent. This is where your private yes goes public. Just as Gideon tore down the altar in broad daylight, this step moves your intention into the light of accountability. Public doesn't mean a megaphone. It means sharing your goal with a trusted circle. Tell your small group, I'm committing to serving once a month. Tell a mentor, I feel God calling me to be more generous. When you speak your intent, you give it life and invite support. It transforms a vague hope into a concrete plan. These 3 steps, a small serve, a simple invitation, and a public declaration, are not a formula, but a pathway. They are how we, like Gideon, learn to trust God's strength in our weakness. It starts today with one small yes. Create a 7-day yes list. Each day do one small obedient action. Report back in comments to build accountability. Gideon was not perfect. He needed reassurance. God's call often comes before we feel ready. Courage is obedience before confidence. Picture the ripple. Your one small yes may touch many. The key is to start small and finish steady. Download the 7-day devotional to start your 7-day yes challenge. Comment, yes, I'll try, and name one small action you'll take today. Subscribe for more short truths.